Buffalo, let's go. Let's get right to it because the Buffalo Bills just won on Monday Night Football against the New York Jets in the Battle of New York, even though it was played in New Jersey. And the Bills beat the Jets 23-20. This is all after the Jets fired Coach Robert Saleh. We'll get to that in a moment. But Kaz, I'm going to kick things off with you. Just what were some of your observations from Monday Night Football tonight?
Well, it was really cool seeing Aaron Rodgers finally get a more honest connection with Garrett Wilson. Been waiting for that for since the beginning of the season. I'm sure Garrett Wilson fantasy owners know exactly what I'm talking about. Um, he looks good, man. Like I'm very critical on Aaron Rodgers. I mentioned Twitter earlier. I have made comments about Aaron Rodgers. I'm a firm believer that if you are truly a good quarterback, you should have no problem finding your number one guy. And it took Aaron Rodgers about three and a half weeks to finally start to find Garrett Wilson. And tonight we saw what they're capable of. Aaron Rodgers he proved me wrong. I'm very critical on him, and he was threading the needle. Guys were drop. I mean, almost every incompletion was due to either a drop or a penalty. You know what I'm saying? Or the defense obviously doing, things that, should have resulted in a penalty, but they weren't called. But Aaron Rodgers looks good, really good. That game should have probably been, I would say, another 7 to 9 points going the Jets' way if they just had guys execute. And I really like seeing that. As for the Bills, I mean, no James Cook. Ray Davis came in, no problem. I actually picked up Ty Johnson off waivers instead of Ray Davis. That didn't work out for me. I should have got Ray. They were both sitting there, but I didn't. Who knew who was going to get the workload? It was Ray. He looks really good. I mean, the Bills they're a good team, and the Jets are still a team that's trying to figure things out. I mean, the Jets keep coming. Just there's this almost. I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, the last two losses, it kind of came to, it were pretty close calls. If I'm not mistaken. This was another one. I mean, they needed these wins. The Jets could easily be 4-2 as much as they are. Um, Not, and I think a big part of it, what I took from this game tonight was it's not Aaron Rodgers for sure. It's not. He's a part of the solution. You take him out of the equation, that Jets team is very bad. So I just noticed that Rodgers he looked really good. I think the firing of Saleh, which I know we're going to talk about later on. Uh, I thought this was going to be a statement game. They had the opportunity. It was right there. I mean, a very close game, and just couldn't capitalize in the end. I mean, there was laundry all over the field all game long. Just a all around sloppy game by both teams, but the quarterback play was pretty good for the most part. So, yeah, good game. Just came down. It was a game of inches that when it came down to it, and Bills got the best of them. So
They certainly did, and just to touch up on Aaron Rodgers' performance tonight, 23 of 35 for 296 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. Aaron Rodgers, according to StatMuse, hasn't had a 300-yard game in over 1,000 days. Obviously, that has a lot to do with his injury being 370 days of it, basically. And then Garrett Wilson, as you touched on, Kaz, the connection is finally there. 8 receptions for 107 yards, 1 touchdown, as Garrett Wilson recorded back-to-back 100-yard games, going back to the game that was in England against the Vikings, in which the Jets were getting absolutely throttled, clawed all the way back just to lose. And that's ultimately what led to Robert Saleh's downfall. And Jaevon, you were saying in our group chat before we got started here tonight that Jaevon Kinlaw, former San Francisco 49er, I mean, when he's not feuding with Grant Cohn, apparently he is beefing with the referees after getting called for an offside penalty late in that game. But aside from Jaevon Kinlaw and all jokes aside, Jaevon, just what did you think of this Monday night performance as the Bills beat the Jets 23-20?
And also on that same drive, he had a roughing the passer penalty that put them, I think, it was first and goal after that. But nonetheless, I thought this game itself, it was pretty sloppy, as Kaz mentioned. I think there was over 16 penalties were accepted in this game. And, there were a bunch of missed field goals. I get there was a bunch of wind, but, I mean, Zerline's missing chip shots. These are 31-yard field goals, and he's wishing them. And it's just like, okay. I think he had 2 missed field goals, so that's 6 points off the board. Bills won by 3. So, I mean, I thought the Jets definitely had a chance to end it or to win it at the end of the game. But obviously the interception by Taron Johnson, who's from Elk Road or went to Franklin High School in Elk Road. It was
Back down.
kind of match made, and I thought that there were just too many missed opportunities by the Jets. I thought a lot of fantasy owners were probably happy with Breece Hall in this game, and also Garrett Wilson, as Kaz mentioned earlier. They were finding a connection. Rodgers can still sling the ball. I think that's neither here nor there. I think most people that have watched in recent games, he kind of started the season off a little bit slow, but I think he's starting to get into the groove a little bit, and rightfully so. He's 40 years old and he's coming off an Achilles injury, so it might take him a while to warm up. But I still think Aaron Rodgers has that potential of being Aaron Rodgers. I just thought that there were way too many penalties for them to overcome in this game, and kind of somebody had to win this game. I saw another stat that Josh Allen, he hasn't thrown an interception at all this year, but he was like, "Oh, I've thrown an interception. They just haven't caught him yet." That's what Joe Buck said. He said it on the broadcast, and I was like, and I looked it up. I was like, "Damn, he really ain't thrown a pick yet." But I was like, "That's Josh Allen's MO."
I did not know that.
Yeah, and he's Ray Davis, man. I thought that Ray Davis, 4th-round pick. He's a rookie. He was one of the better running backs in the SEC last year. Like for the last 2 years, he was like one of the best running backs in college football, and he went all the way in the 4th round, which is kind of insane to me. So I wasn't surprised to see that he was getting his shine because I saw him play at Kentucky, gambled on a couple Kentucky games. But I knew that he was capable of being what he is, what we saw. That James Cook was, obviously out with injuries. So Buffalo continues to kind of, Josh Allen has to kind of put his cape on, and if he has a solid running game, they'll be able to kind of make things happen. And going into this game, I was kind of on the fence about who to pick because Buffalo had a couple of injuries on defense. They were missing James Cook. You would have needed Josh Allen to have a solid game, but I thought Ray Davis was definitely the X factor in this game, allowing them to have a play action game and Josh Allen being able to make plays with his feet as well. So, hats off to the Bills. I think it's going to come down to the wire with this division because it's not as good as I thought it would have been. I did pick the Jets to win this division, but I feel like they're going to definitely go back and forth. But this was a game that they had to have to win if they wanted to be upright in the division, with the Buffalo Bills being the number one seed in this division. So I think we'll probably only see one team out of this division get to the playoffs, and that's the division winner. And this is going to kind of come down. That could potentially bite the Jets in the butt later on down the line, because the Bills obviously have the head-to-head victory already. But they play them twice, so we'll see later in the season what these two teams look like. Now there's a bunch of off-the-field stuff going on with Robert Saleh obviously getting fired, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But the Bills look the less dysfunctional, or like they did it like they had a lot of penalties, but somebody had to win this game, and the Bills got the job done, and that's kind of what it comes down to: wins and losses.
They certainly did get the job done. Greg Zuerlein, as was mentioned, clanking a couple field goals, or at least that last one was definitely a clanker. And so, the Jets, they just seem to keep falling short. And that was before we get to the solid news, which was basically broken by Adam Schefter of ESPN, like early morning Tuesday. So we were off last week, but we wouldn't have been able to talk about it last week because it happened on Tuesday morning. But before we get to that, that is a crazy stat about Josh Allen. I haven't watched every single Bills game, so I just assumed that he has thrown an interception this year. And the reason why that's such a crazy stat, and like Jaevon, you are the gambler on this podcast, and Kaz, I know you dabble a little bit too, but that was such a easy way to make money betting the over. If the over is at Josh Allen half an interception, always betting the over, that was like free money right there. And so much so that I remember vividly last season, that the sports books took it off completely. Not just the sports books, but also all the like sleeper fantasy, like the fantasy apps and stuff like that. Like they all took it off. It was not available because it was such a game, and that was on a game-to-game basis. So now for them to be 6 games into the season and have him without an interception right now, that's pretty impressive. So props to Josh Allen, especially with the way that he was slandered this offseason. NFL players voted that he was the most overrated quarterback in the NFL, and it seems just like Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, he took that personally and he remembered, and he's showing it. And so